Roger Daltrey used to come in the shop where I worked because he had a trout farm.
Hello.
Hey, Matt.
All right, so I'm here with Pete Rogers, and we're just going to talk about. Well, what I'd like to do is ask you, how the hell do you start to be making indie comics? Where does that journey start?
I guess it starts off as a kid just reading loads of comics and but not really thinking you can do it. And then years later, I did a couple of screenwriting courses, and but I'm from Dorset. I was living in Swansea, and it's not neither of those places at the time was exactly Hollywood. So I was like, it just seems really out of reach. And I got back into reading comics because my first ever beach holiday, and I was bored senseless. And I was like, I finished all the books I was reading. So I just literally, the local shop had a load of Marvel and DC comics. So I started reading those. And then I started reading all the stuff I'd missed out on over the years, like, Dark Knight Rises and Watchmen and stuff. And I thought, well, hang on a sec, I write. Somebody obviously writes these comics. I could try that. And then early days of the internet, but early-ish days of the internet, I just joined forums and just got groups and just befriended loads of artists. And then through that, I started submitting to places. I had loads of kind of short stories that people were interested in, but then nothing really came about. So in the end, I set up a little publishing company making comics and then taking them to conventions. We got nominated for a few awards, and then publishers started to take notice then. So it's cool. It's weird. I'd imagine it's very similar to kind of some ends of music where, if you don't do it yourself, it's not going to happen.
It's a weird one because it's hard to, because now if you lived in so we come from Northamptonshire, which was cultural wasteland, but it was our cultural wasteland, and I love Northamptonshire, so I'm not being disrespectful to it. But it was, there wasn't a lot going on, so we made our own fun. We all started bands, and we all started, putting out tapes and going to studios and doing gigs, and we made our own scene. And I think, but we had no way of anyone else ever hearing that because of no internet and that, and there's no, way of connecting with the outside world. And I think in those days, if you in Dorset or Wales or Rochedon or anywhere like that, it was virtually impossible to connect to an audience. But do you think now that it's a lot easier, with the internet and that, you don't really need to be in London or somewhere?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think, growing up, I was like, if I wanted to do it then, I was like, well, which of my friends is an artist? That would have been the only option I had, really. And then I think that the first 3 books I had were all with people in South America that I met online.
Really?
Yeah. I think somebody from Argentina, maybe somebody from Chile. But I think I've worked with people from all around the world now. It just from you're on the same forums. When you're starting out, I think a lot of artists need stuff in their portfolio. Writers need stuff. You all just you do short comics together while you're kind of making the start, really.
So the interactives then. So who was the artist for that? Was that
the artist on that is called Luciano Vecchio, who is Argentinian. And
the art's amazing.
Yeah, he's gone on to he's doing stuff at Marvel and DC now. So at the time, I met him on a forum. I posted an ad, I think, looking for an artist. I'd just taken redundancy from a job, so I put the money, or some of the money, to one side to pay the artist. Because that's the strange thing with comics. Even if a publisher picks you up at the kind of really indie level, they'll pay for the book to be put out. You give up 50% of the IP, but you've got to pay the artist yourself.
So is that how it works? That's interesting.
Yeah, so that was one of the reasons I haven't had as much. A lot of people go, "Oh, you're doing quite well. Where's the rest of your books?" I'm like, "Well, I haven't got the money to just, it's an expensive hobby in lots of ways, really." So I found the artist and the colorist, and then took the book to the publisher, basically, the first 6 pages, and said, "What do you think of this idea?" And they were interested, and then took it from there, really.
It properly looks incredible. I mean, it's proper top end pro stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was the artist I don't think he'd ever left South America at the time, and then he flew over for the Bristol Comic Convention, which used to be now there are comic conventions in every village hall every weekend, or they were before the pandemic. But the Bristol one used to be the main thing in the UK. Once a year, every May, everybody that was into comics in the UK pretty much all descended on the train shed in Bristol Temple Meads train station and would go there, and it'd be amazing. I miss those days. But the scene kind of split off then into kind of, every town needs a version of it, and then it just became a little bit watered down, really.
And is it similar to when you're in a band? It's quite hard to gain an audience initially for a comic and stuff.
Yeah, and I think people are quite fickle the same way, in a way that like people are looking for the new thing. And I think the main thing I would say, somebody was like, when a band goes a few years without putting an album out, the next album comes out, you've got to try and gain that traction again. And I think the same thing with comics. Same with me. I like people go, oh, I haven't read any of your stuff for ages, and I put a new thing out, and they'd be like, oh, and people would have forgotten who you are by then. It is tough. I think it's easier in a way for an artist because you're more likely to get work, and if someone likes your art style, they really like, there's something visual to kind of latch onto. But with writers, unless you're really kind of going for it, or you're working for like the really big publishers, it's quite hard to get a foothold, really.
Talking to a mate of mine, he does a lot of work for DC. He said a lot of the shops have really been in a rough old. The actual comic shop distribution network's been in a rough old place this year. It's been a very tough time. I think DC lost a lot of staff.
There's lots of sort of consolidation in the industry. It's a weird thing because, Marvel and DC used to sell like 100,000 copies of each comic, or more in the 90s, in the millions. And now you're talking like 10, 20,000, and it's become like a cottage industry. And in many ways, it's kept going by the IP being used in film and TV and merchandise, which is a much, much kind of bigger industry, really. But I find it weird now. Like growing up as a kid, I'd be wearing like my Hulk t-shirt and like, proper geek and stuff. And then other people wouldn't really know anything apart from those main characters. But because of all the movies and stuff,
it's like, weird, isn't it?
My sister would be posting things on Facebook about WandaVision and all the sort of Easter eggs in it. And I'm thinking, well, she wasn't interested in that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, really, how something kind of very niche has kind of become the mainstream media, really.
Well, when we were, me and Kevin from the Fierce and Dead and all my mates, we were the cool kids, obviously. We were into role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons and all that stuff. And then American comics, Watchmen, anything Alan Moore, all that stuff. And, all the sort of quite 2000 AD and quite punk rock sort of comics, weren't they? There's a lot of political stuff in there, and we loved all that. And then we got into thrash metal and into playing in rock bands and stuff. But that comics culture was really important to us. And I think, you'd buy a metal album because you look at a cover that looked like a thrash metal, looked like an American comic. So there's a real sort of crossover there. And
it definitely is. I think bands like Anthrax and stuff, and like it's amazing me how many bands like lyrically have done kind of stuff. And then what I found out in the last few years is a lot of the big comic artists are massive prog fans. And I've only found that out because it's a weird thing. Like people in comics don't want to talk to other people about comics because that's their job, really. So I ended up talking. Yeah. I've met more kind of bigger names through music than anything else, really. Certainly on social media, there's certainly a lot of my Twitter conversations tend to be about music more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I've done some music with like Mark Buckingham, who's done, and he does he's done loads, hasn't he? He's done he's quite well known in the industry and stuff. And it is weird that there's that sort of, I suppose it's always that crossover between. I think if you're a bit of a nerd for one thing, you're probably a bit of a nerd for something else as well. You're a bit of a niche interest and stuff.
Yeah,
I think that's cool, man. It's just like, I love
Mark. Funny enough, is the first comics professional I ever met. I met him at a Comic Mart in Cardiff when I was first starting out, and I was asking for advice. I went up to him and bought a page of his art, and then asked him for some advice.
Such a cool dude, isn't he?
Yeah, but then I didn't ever, give him ever again. And then again online, we both found out we're going to be at the same big train gig. And there's loads of people from comics I've reconnected with through music, and it's been
he's a properly lovely man. I'm a big fan. Yeah. So you moved from doing the comics into doing sort of films, or how did that kind of work?
Yeah, well, I started off, as I said, doing kind of screenplays before doing comics, and then I've been doing comics kind of on and off for a long time. And then the last couple of years, really, so my day job is in visual effects and motion graphics. So I'm kind of working in the TV and film industry anyway. So yeah, the last couple of years, I just kind of thought, well, actually, I originally did screenwriting training when I was living back home. It would seem like this crazy, weird thing to ever get close to like TV and film. But now I'm in Cardiff, which is where an awful lot of films and TV gets made. I'm spending most of my time in my job working with directors and producers. And friends of mine have been going at me for years, like, have you not thought of it? And I'm like, well, no, it doesn't make sense. And then at some point I just sort of went, oh yeah. I have all the contacts that a lot of other people don't have. So I had my first short made about 3 years ago. And I'm working on a short that's in development at the moment. I've got a TV pilot I've just sent to an agent. So I'm doing it a bit late in life. But I think I used lockdown, to be fair. The start of lockdown last year, I kind of thought, if I'm going to be stuck in the house for a long time, I'm going to listen to a lot of music. I'm either going to kind of drift into a deep depression, or I'm going to have to do something else. So the few things I did, I started getting fitter, and I threw myself back into writing, and I got myself 2 mentors, one through sort of Screen Skills, one through BAFTA, and they've been coaching me on my writing for the past year. So in the evenings, I basically write a script, send it off. I did some singing lessons with that Joe Payne, but that we won't talk about that. But only because it was like, that was my, another thing I could do is get back into singing, because I was in bands as a teenager myself. But I think it's a weird thing. Like, I think through my whole life, it's like, I like films. I know, I'll write films. I like comics. I know, I'll write comics. And then like, I'm almost have to tell myself, like, music is the last thing. It's something I can't do. I've always thought, to me, I always see musicians are like magicians to me, because I don't really know what they're doing, but I know it's very special and it's really important to me. So I kind of almost go, well, if I started getting into singing and stuff, then it suddenly becomes yet another thing that I've gone from a fan to wanting to do. And I think it may be the one thing I should leave as a I don't want to see how the sausage is made. I want to leave it as a precious thing.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I can totally see. I mean, like, looking at your work, man, it's so good. I mean, geez. I mean, the scale of your idea is incredible, dude. And I wish I had those sort of. I wish I could visualize things and come up with concepts like you can. Bloody hell! I was looking through the comics you've done, and like I say, if you can move that across to film and stuff, and I don't think it matters about your age anymore as well, because I think there used to be a thing of, unless you did it by the time you were 25. But like, I didn't put my first album out till I was 29. And I thought I'd basically, I'd moved to London and to play in a band, and basically it all went horribly wrong. And I ended up working in a record shop, which is,
Right.
it was good, all right, but it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. But, I got a chance to do we never became a particularly big band, but, we've got a little cult following and we really enjoy doing it. And I think, you can have a sort of, you can still keep doing things and make you interesting art. And if you keep making good art, it'll eventually you'll get an audience for it. But I would imagine the comics field is incredibly competitive, isn't it?
Yeah, there's certainly lots of people that want to do it, and I think more all the time. So yeah, it's not easy to say. There's that financial barrier as well. Unless you kind of get straight in with a big publisher that's going to cover it, there is, and that's been tougher for me as I've got older and like become a parent and stuff. You're kind of like, well, can I really justify throwing thousands of pounds into something that I know I'm never going to get the money back, really?
Totally relate to that. Yeah, I totally understand.
But as I always say as well, I don't go out that much. Well, I definitely don't go out anymore. I don't play golf. I don't go cycling. So
no, exactly. Yeah,
you got to do something for yourself,
Yeah, totally. I think that's the key to it, isn't it? That I think you've got to do something, because there's there's a mental health aspect to these things that it really is helpful for your mental health, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely you need an outlet, I think, for all kinds of emotions.
But I think in terms of what you're doing, I mean, I really hope that, you continue to make the short film. So in terms of your day job, then, is that sort of, you're doing visual effects? So you're fully pro in the industry anyway, aren't you? I am. I have been for sort of the last 10 years. So I was in radio for 10 years and then changed industries. But so I'm not an artist. I can't do any of the like clever stuff, but I run a team of people that can. So yeah, we do visual effects for like
Films on Netflix, like Apostle a couple of years ago. We did a film called Dream Horse that should have come out last year but was delayed because of the pandemic. We do stuff for different TV shows and things. And then on the motion design side, where I do get to be a little bit more creative and not just look at spreadsheets. So yeah, we've done a few. To be honest, our passion projects, we do like commercials and we'll do TV titles and graphics. Which kind of pays the bills. And then we might do the odd music project as a passion project because the guy who founded the studio, they used to share studio space with the Super Furry Animals. He started off doing their DVD menus back in the day and then worked on a load of their stuff. And we've done stuff with Pete Fowler with them. We worked on stuff for Griff and also Kian, who's another member of the band. We've done a few things with him. And then somebody approached us to do a music video and went, oh, the budget's not great and it's all animation, we're never going to be able to do it. Who's the band? And they went, Deep Purple. I went, yeah, it's fine. So, and the younger people in the studio were like, who? And I was like, who? It's Deep Purple. And I was like, well, I said, no, it's fine. I'll do the production work in the evenings. Like, you know, there probably isn't money to cover me like managing it through the studio. But then that was great. They come to us with a synopsis through the record label or through this production company, and then they wanted to have like a motion comic kind of style. I'm like, well, I know how to sort that out. So I got a guy called Matt Rook, who I've worked with a few times, really good comic artist. So he did the art for it. And then we co-directed it because we kind of put together an animatic and worked it through. And it was for a song called The Surprising, which is a much proggier record. So I liked it straight away.
I've heard they've gone a bit more prog, haven't they?
Since the Steve Morse influence, I guess.
He's a great guitar player.
So we worked on that, and that was a longer song. So again, it was great because it actually the videos got these little nods to all their albums as like little hidden Easter eggs through it. So on YouTube, it absolutely blew up really quickly, like 1.7 million views or something of people trying to work it out. So I wish we'd been paid by the click. That's what I should have done. Went to the gig with him, met Roger, met Don, and it was just like.
Ooh. Were they nice?
And so the artists, he invited him down and he met them with us as well. And then like we're having notes on the mix from Bob Ezrin on email, and it's just like, I was kind of pinching myself because he produced the last two albums. And I was a bit like, okay, this is for like a random thing that's come into the studio. This has been, this was really good fun. Like whatever happens in my life, I can say.
Yeah. Totally understand.
Video,
A lot of the things you do, even if they're not financially beneficial, if they're bringing you some sense of joy and accomplishment, and if you said to yourself when you were the kid, you'd be one day making videos of Deep Purple. I mean, don't get it much better than that, does it?
No, exactly. Off the back of that, we were approached through the same company through Europe, liked the video, so they wanted one as well. So used the same artist. Then Joey Tempest was sending me notes on the synopsis back and forth. So that was bizarre. Again, teenage me would have been like, I don't really get how has this happened exactly. Yeah. And then off the back of that, then the record label Ear Music came to us direct and said, do you know anyone who does graphic novels? And I'm like, well, yeah, I do. And they went, Taya used to be in Nightwish.
Yeah, I know.
He's doing a Christmas album, and we'd planned to put out a Christmas graphic novel. And I was like, well, I can write it for you. So did that, pitched the idea. Had to pitch it to her husband, who's also her manager, which was interesting. And then, so pitched the idea. This, we really like the idea, and we've got the artist involved, a guy called Connor Boyle, and it was all going well. And they went, what about the video? And like, what do you mean about the video? So, well, you mean the idea from the video that comes from the graphic novel? I said, okay. Well, I go, yeah, I can pull together an idea for a video in like a week or two. And then we're filming it tomorrow. We've got the green screen studio tomorrow. And I went, okay. So I pulled an all-nighter basically and just wrote out a treatment and a shot list. And then sent it off the next morning. They filmed the bits with Taya that they needed to do, and then we animated scenes from the graphic novel to work around it. It's for O Tannenbaum for Christmas.
That must have been a little bit stressful.
It was stressful. It was one of those, I don't know how this is going to work. And then that was mad. Ringing the manager to pitch how we were going to do it, and then she's doing scales in the background on the phone, which was mad. Sounded amazing. And then then it did. But then that thing is like, when you have a real difficult situation that feels impossible, and then you do manage to pull it off. So again, that was like, oh, okay, there's a graphic novel. If you buy the deluxe edition, you get a graphic novel that I've written, and on YouTube now is the video with a couple of 100,000 hits that
you're very modest. But you've had an incredible career. I mean, blimey.
Yeah, but it's bizarre. I do pinch myself. My wife, when I get on those days, I'm like, oh, I'm getting older and I haven't done anything in my life. And my wife's like, seriously, are you joking me? And then she'll just go again. And my thing I have to say to myself is like, if 11 or 12-year-old me was told all the things I'd done, and I haven't done all the things I want to do in life, but it's like, but even just to have written one comic would have been enough for, you know. So yeah, got to put it all into perspective.
You've done some amazing stuff, man. So what's next is the question I have to ask.
Well, I can reveal something exclusively to you. Exciting stuff. So I guess we're of a similar age, I think. So did you watch Robin of Sherwood back in the day?
I do. I do remember Robin of Sherwood, yeah.
So I've been working with the Hoodie Indeed. I've been working with the license owner of that, and I pitched to them about doing a comic. So there will be pre-orders coming out soon for an annual. Basically, there was an annual, obviously, back in the day, but the third series with Jason Connery didn't get an annual. So we're going to do an annual now for the third series. And I've written a script which is based on one of the Clannad songs from the Legend album, which is an album I absolutely love. I always have music on when I'm writing. So yeah, it was great. And it's a child, like, again, if you're kind of at that age, yes, I would like to have written Batman. I'd like to have written Spider-Man, but actually, Robin of Sherwood was my favourite show.
It's really cool.
Mile, you know.
Yes,
that's come together really well. So yeah, there will be an annual available for pre-orders, and with a little comic strip in it by me.
And I bet that's one of those things where there's a massive cult following for it, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And they still have conventions and stuff, and the cast kind of get back together and stuff. So yeah, there's definitely still an interest in it.
Brilliant.
For me, I just sat and rewatched the Blu-rays, picked out kind of little character moments, and then sat and wrote it, say with the Clannad album on vinyl on a loop. I sat and wrote it really, which is good fun.
So, if you could work on anything, what would it be going forward? Any IP or anything? Or would you prefer to work on your own projects, or what would be your ambition?
Comics wise, I would love to write Predator comics. I'd love to do a prequel about the crew so Predator without Predator. I'd love to write stories about the crew and what their kind of story was before. I'm definitely a kind of 80s action nerd as well. But yeah, my own stuff really, where, in comics, I'd love to be, I've got a few things kind of pitched out, but I say it depends on financial situation really, if I get a big enough publisher where there's an advance or anything. But if not, say that, the TV and film ideas I've got are pretty broad. I kind of like elevated genre stuff. I tend to write stuff that's either got a fantasy or sci-fi or horror or some element to it, but with hopefully with like an emotional kind of core to it really, because I think there's a bit of snobbery sometimes about the only real worthy stuff is straight drama, and it's like, well, actually the science fiction exists really as a way of holding a mirror up to the world and exploring kind of the human psyche or politics or sociology and stuff. So I think
that snobbery about niche culture has gone now to an extent now, isn't it? I mean, comics aren't considered uncool anymore. I don't think that everyone plays online games. People buy, everyone's got a Switch. Everyone's I think one of the interesting things is, like our generation, prog was considered massively uncool, wasn't it?
Yeah, totally.
But to kids now, they don't see the genre problem at all. There's no, not at all. There's no, you talk to somebody who's 17, 18 now, they don't see the snobbery around. It's completely irrelevant, that cultural snobbery that was the Enemy and those magazines and stuff. And I think, like you say, you can take these, because sci-fi or prog or anything like this, they're all just cool ideas you can experiment with, and you can just do what you like musically or do what you like in terms of creating comics or film or anything. These are all ideas to be explored, and why not take the best from all of them and just throw them at the wall and I think one of the things, like when Buffy was on in the late 90s, I think that was one of the things where things started to change.
Yeah.
Whereas that was something that was, sort of crossed over into a lot of people's. It was something that was kind of niche, but that was massively culturally influential. And then so the long form TV box sets. I mean, so many of those long form TV shows, they're very similar to like X-Men, like the Dark Phoenix run on X-Men and things like that. That stuff. Just because all X-Men is a soap opera basically, isn't it?
Totally,
so many things like that, and there's a soap opera that uses like mutants instead of like sexism, racism, and people being oppressed and stuff, and he uses them as a sort of metaphor for that, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
And that's why comics and that. I think that's why and I think it's really cool that everyone's watching WandaVision and loving it because it's great TV, isn't it?
Yeah, it's certainly a change. I think it's almost the stuff that I got picked on for as a kid is now the stuff that I wanted into. But I think we were saying, there's a guy who used to work with me who's like in his early 20s, and he's completely genre agnostic. He might be listening to Childish Gambino in the morning and Camel in the afternoon, and I'm like, and he's like, it's just music. And I'm like, well, that's a really good attitude to have, because that's been the interesting thing. Because I think we're say of a similar age, and like prog to me was like, if you told me growing up that I'll be listening to old Genesis albums and going to see Marillion, I'd be like, don't think you find I will, but obviously now I am. But I find it the weird, the kind of, because I will happily move around musical genres listening to and take influence from stuff from wherever, but I also know what I really like. But I do find the kind of, I think off the back of the Stephen Wilson thing, I've got a bit like, do you have to be quite such a, not a purist, because I can be a purist and I can be a musical snob at times, but do you have to be quite so narrow in your thinking?
There's a lot of people getting really upset over nothing there, aren't there? Oh man, it's too short.
It's bizarre, but I saw a thing the other day. I think somebody on one of the prog groups had said, what was the first album you ever bought? And I think mine was like Bad Manners or something. It's like, because I've been through loads of different like musical personalities through my life, really. And quite a lot of people were saying Genesis or Yes when they were 8, and I'm thinking,
I'm not sure that. It's got those people say, famous. I'm not sure when people say the first album they bought, some people say, "Oh yeah, Velvet Underground" or something like that. Yeah. It's like, it wasn't. It was. I mean, the first album I bought was Guns N' Roses because that's what all the kids were listening to, and I was at school. Guns N' Roses was the. I mean, it's not. That was all there was.
Yeah, I think I bought Bad Manners, Forging Ahead on cassette. But I think the same year I got a Shakin' Stevens cassette off me nan for Christmas.
But that was so. These I get a feeling sometimes that people say, "Oh yeah, no, I've only ever listened to Genesis. I've only ever listened to King Crimson. First album I bought was King Crimson, Starless, and Bible Black." Really? Well, it's Sherwood Body or Guns N' Roses or Iron Maiden or Level 42 or something. I mean, I'm sure nobody gets it that right first, and they've only ever listened to Velvet Underground or Jesus and Mary Chain or I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's necessarily true when people say stuff like that.
No, I know what I mean. And I think most of the music I listened to when I was really young was my dad's music. But
what was your dad into?
Massively into ABBA. Huge ABBA fan, and I was born the year they won Eurovision, so I'll always sort of talk about that. And ELO, he's a huge ELO fan, and I adore ELO. Time is one of my favourite. Time is probably, as a kid, I think I was about 7 or 8 when Time came out, and I'd like music anyway. I've always liked music, and then put that record on. I was like, "There's a story. It's set in space. And it's in the future. Oh, I really like this, and I'm going to read the lyrics. And I'm going to see that really immersed me. Kind of, music can tell stories, and I've always then kind of gravitated to stuff that does ever since. But he's always been like 10cc, Supertramp. Also stuff I didn't like Foster and Allen. Not a big fan of them.
He sounded like he was a big fan of very, very high quality pop music.
Yeah,
because 10cc. I read the 10cc book this year, and then I went back and listened to it. And it's like incredible players. Oh my god! Yeah. They were like a British Steely Dan or something. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of these bands. They've always been around. I sort of never really paid much attention to them, apart from the singles. But 10cc, incredible band, great players, and so it's weird, isn't it? You don't even pay attention.
And I think that's one of the things. Again, there's kind of a generation that kind of go, "Oh, you shouldn't be, don't stream music." But I've listened to so much music from the past. I'd never, and again, it's weird. The bands I've always liked, I usually don't like the singles, probably because of overplay. But I gave it up. But my favorite song is like the 7th one on the album or whatever. It's like the more eclectic kind of thing. But then there's other bands I've only ever judged by the singles. So yeah, getting back and listening to 10cc, listening to Supertramp, through the kind of Big Train connection, I've listened to a lot of XTC, and it's like they're an amazing band. Yeah,
XTC I had written off as a band that all I knew was Making Plans for Nigel, but their catalogue is extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, and the songwriting from both bands, just the story of the fact 2 different songwriters that sung their own songs and stuff. And I went to see TC&I in Swindon.
Did you go to that? I'd love to go to that. Was it good?
Yeah, it was really good. Really good.
And then they're not doing any more, are they?
No, sadly not.
So that's the closest you'll ever get to see an XTC.
Yeah, it is. It's true.
What's your favourite XTC album?
English Settlement, I think. I mean,
it's a difficult one, isn't it? There's that run from, everything they did after the first 2 albums.
Yeah, it's.
I don't really get the first 2, but as soon as Dave Gregory joins, they're. I really like Oranges and Lemons. I really like Skylarking. I really like.
Skylarking took me a while because I think there's a comic artist called Mark Lamming who's become my musical guru. He's been like, just try this band, just try that band. He's filled in all the gaps for me. I always thanking him because so many bands I've either heard of through him or tangentially through the other bands I've got into. But he was like, Skylarking. So I did this. I used to do this thing on Twitter where I used to pick a band I didn't know very well and listen to all their albums in order and then tweet about it, which is not the best way to consume music, I don't think, but it's an interesting thing to do. But Skylarking didn't really register with me. And I was like, I don't know. And then a few more listens and and the difference in the production and stuff, it just clicked. And now it is probably one of my favourites. But it just took I needed to kind of tune myself into it.
It definitely there's a massive leap to Skylarking, but if you go via the Dukes, I suppose it's less of a leap. But
yeah,
Skylarking reminds me of Jellyfish. I'm a huge fan. I love Jellyfish, and it's got that kind of XTC did it first, by some distance, but it all goes back to the 60s psychedelics. I
love the sequencing on it and the fact that the songs kind of run into each other. It's just you've just got to sit and listen to the whole thing, which.
It's so clever.
I'm much happier to do anyway. I miss the days of coming home from school or coming home from early jobs and if you haven't bought a record and just turn the lights off, lie in your bed and just listen to it.
I used to do that. I used to do it all the time, just lie in the bed with the lights off and listening to music. I used to do it all the time. And I probably haven't done that for, years and years and years.
Yeah, me too. I think now I'm like, I've got to be doing something else. I've got to be doing something else.
Yeah. But that's a shame, isn't it?
It's a shame.
It's a shame that that we've lost that thing of music used to be central to culture, didn't it? And it's like you used to. And you're saying about your friend, he doesn't see music as it's just music to him. Whereas before there used to be, if you're into a style of music, a uniform you had to wear. When I was a metal kid, I used to have to wear my Iron Maiden stuff and me denim and my hair had to be a certain way. And I think it's good it's gone, to be honest. You don't need all that cultural attachment to music, but the music used to be how you defined yourself as a person. You were a metal fan or you're a prog fan or, you're punk or indie rock or whatever, that was what you're into. And, but now I suppose it's people can express themselves through social media. And a lot of people sort of seem to have latched onto, their cultural identity via politics as well. And to be honest, I was completely politically apathetic when I was a teenager, apart from being vaguely against the government in some way that I didn't really understand. I was vaguely, not keen on big business and stuff, but I just lived in my own little musical world where records were important. And
it's interesting to me, for politics, I had a really kind of good history teacher that kind of politicized me a bit. And then I got into the Mannix. The first Mannix album really kind of again, from being someone who just sit with the lights off and listen to an album, and then as a fan club member and stuff.
They were really critical, weren't they? And you know, I absolutely adored the Holy Bible album when it came out. I was obsessed with the Holy Bible.
Yeah, same.
And it's just, that was
one of the strangest things I've ever been to. About 3-4 years ago, they did the Holy Bible in a gig here in Cardiff, but it was in Cardiff Castle, and it was after they'd been so big. So you had people like me, probably like the front third music fans who were like hanging on every note of that record. Yeah. And then you had people that were absolutely hammered in like pink cowboy hats that were just like, because the second half of the set was the greatest hits, and they just didn't know what was going on really. And then they were once it made me laugh though, because Design for Life comes on. Yeah. And like for me, that is a song about, I don't know, it's about, I've always thought it's mocking the kind of people who are now.
Yeah.
And they're all singing it, and like, we just want to get drunk. And I'm like, you know, it's
weird, isn't it?
It was a very strange evening.
It was weird because when the Mannix did Holy Bible, it was such, because it was like they'd suddenly gone from being sort of quite a commercial indie rock sort of, they suddenly got into Pantera, and you know they got really the riffs were just really heavy riffs. Guitar playing was awesome on it. I mean, and the lyrics were really dark. You know, it was. I'm gonna have to listen to it again. I've listened to it for ages. And I didn't really enjoy the later Mannix stuff as much. It seemed so... I like the first post-Ritchie one, but just didn't seem to connect with me. But their fan base was super intense, weren't they?
Yeah.
And I mean, I used to know a few Mannix fans, and they were like a bit like Smiths fans, weren't they? Really into it, you know what I mean? Really obsessive, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. And the weird thing, like, I used to always joke that one of the reasons I moved to Wales was because of Mannix. That wasn't strictly true. I was a fan club member, and I was looking at places to go to uni, and like the Cool Cymru thing was almost happening.
Yeah.
Kind of, I was like, the prospectus has got people in Mannix shirts. Oh, I might go and see what it's like there. And I did end up going there, and I stupidly, when I worked in radio, told the managing director that as like an anecdote. And then the Mannix did a homecoming gig, Carling sponsored thing, and so we're at the after show, and they're like, Pete, I just want someone to come and meet you. And I'm like, oh, who's that? And so it was the band. And he moved to Wales because of your first album. And they just sort of went, oh, okay, and then walked off. And I thought, oh, you've just made me look
mate.
You made me look a fool. So, have a run of that. I like met Tom York, and like he told me off for singing at his gig. So that was weird.
Do you think it's wise not to meet your heroes?
Yeah, I think so. But I think it just depends on the context as well, because this was a situation where someone I knew his sister-in-law, and she'd got me and my cousin tickets. Well, we already had tickets. She said, I'll get you some tickets. So we sold our tickets. And so when you get there, like, you'll get a badge for like after show thing. I was like, okay, we got these stickers that like lit up. So we went to the gig, and like, it was in the big top tour. I think it was like Kid A, might have been Kid A.
I saw that tour, yeah.
And it was really good. And then at the end, this guy comes around with a torch, and he's kind of basically trying to find people who got these stickers on. And he's like, right, come on, you get put in a golf cart. And then we went into Tredegar House, into this like stately home. And I was like, this is rock and roll. And then we were in this room, and it was journalists and us, and me and my cousin, and all these kind of people like, oh, hello, I'm from the NME. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just a bloke. And stuff, and we were getting free beer, and I thought, this is brilliant. This has been a brilliant end to a brilliant evening. And then there was another room that kind of threw a curtain, and the person I knew, Jenny, she was there like chatting to these bouncers, and they were like, you two come through here. And I was like, no, it's great. Yeah, come through here. So we went through, and then we were kind of sat at the table with like members of the like Tom York's family, but no one kind of said who we were. So the band then turn up, like we're sat in their seats, sitting there drinking beer, and it was just kind of
massively awkward. Yeah,
it was really awkward. And he said, "Oh, do you sing along?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love singing along gigs." He went, "Oh, that's my job." I went, "Oh, okay." But I don't know. I couldn't tell if it was just like a deadpan kind of thing, or if he just was. But it was weird. But then some other friends of his turned up. There's nowhere to sit, and he went, "Yeah, some hangers on, in the chairs." And so I looked at my cousin and went, "Oh, I feel really tired. I think maybe we should call it a night." And people like, "You've only just got even had a couple of beers." I said, "No, I'm tired. I think I got an early start tomorrow. I'm going to make a move," and we just kind of left really.
I think that's one of the reasons I've had a few opportunities to meet people who've sort of a big fan of, and I was like, not going to bother. This can't go.
I was obsessive Radiohead fan at the time.
Oh yeah, no, I still love it.
So it was kind of, well, I was like, it was a little bit, well, I don't know. I've looked at it now, a bit older, and I kind of go, well, it's one of those things. You turned up in a place that really...
it was you were both put in a difficult position. It went a bit wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas at the time, I was a bit like, right, I'm not buying the next album, but I did.
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't think I've never had a bad experience meeting anybody, but I had the opportunity to meet someone I was a massive fan of, and I didn't go. I chose not to. Because I just thought, like, especially I'd had a 2 or 3 beers where I thought, this can't go well. It's just not worth it, because you don't want to be sat there thinking, oh, this bloke was a what's it, he was. But I've met lots of musicians through playing in bands and stuff, and I've never had a bad experience, to be honest. I've never met anybody I thought, oh. But perhaps I went in with incredibly low expectations. Normally, I don't expect anyone to particularly like me or want to be my friend, but I've never had a bad experience with anybody, really. But yeah, it's always. I met Jimmy Page once. That went really badly. I was working in a shop, and he came in and he was talking to us, and I just couldn't talk to him. The mouth wouldn't work. The head was there, but the mouth wouldn't work. I just fell to bits. And all I could think is, I used to have your picture on my wall when I was 15. You wrote Stairway to Heaven. That was all I could deal with in the situation. So
that's the thing, you see, like say in my day job, I kind of meet a lot of people that, are relatively famous and stuff, and work with different actors. But musicians is my kind of, again, because of what I said before about, how I look up to musicians. I do get this really weird, even though a lot of my friends seem to be in the last few years are musicians, but it is that weird thing. But at the Tom York situation, I think it didn't help that my cousin, who was 6'7", so you can't miss it. Literally, once he saw the band, his mouth just sort of dropped open and it never closed. He just sat there like this.
Which is totally understandable reaction, isn't it?
He was just completely in. And because I was working in radio at the time, I was a little bit used to it, more used to it than he was. Maybe not, maybe not with people whose music I liked as much. But it was, I think, it was a weird situation.
We did some gigs with Hawkwind. I used to love Hawkwind when I was a kid, and we were supporting them. But it's different when you're playing. It's fine if you're doing a gig with somebody and you're both working, and it's fine. What I don't feel comfortable is me being the fan, and sort of talking to somebody and being really sort of, I love you, I love your stuff, you. And it's like, if we're both working or in the context of people who, you're doing a gig with them or you're backstage or somewhere and they know what you've sort of done or something. But I suppose it's very difficult when you meet people and sort of think, I wouldn't want to meet like some of the musicians I really like just in case they did turn out to be massive what's-its, you know what I mean? And also, when you meet people, they might be having a bad day. They might have had something go wrong. They might have had an argument with a girlfriend. They might have had the sound. They might be musicians. I remember this guy wrote this really nasty thing about me online once. And he said, oh, he didn't want to talk to me. I was trying to talk to him after gig, and I was packing up my gear. I haven't got a road crew, so I'm packing all my own gear up. The stage manager's shouting at me to get off stage. I'm trying to unload my thing. And this guy's, yeah, I really enjoyed your set, mate. It was really good. So I'm just ever so sorry. I've got to get all this stuff off because they're gonna shout at me. And he didn't want to talk to me after. And it's like, I haven't got a choice. There's another band coming on. I've got all this gear to shift. And it's like
the weird thing. I think people don't, because if someone's like, I really want to meet this person, I will meet this person. They're building up to all day in their head. Like, this is what I want to say to that person. I suppose you forget that. Yeah, everyone's a person.
And also, I mean, the expectations you have of an individual by consuming the media they put out aren't necessarily what the individual's actually like. People can very carefully stage manage their persona to the point where, you don't know what people are really like. And like I say, people have bad days, people have good days,
I think it's a weird thing. I think because music is such a personal thing, I think more than anything else, if you listen to a lot of someone's music, you do almost feel like you know them. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I mean,
there is a different relationship.
I've definitely had that with artists, and but I used to work in a shop in London. We used to have lots and lots of famous people come in all the time. It was, but you just eventually just got used to it and it just seemed normal. You know what I mean? It's just like, but when you're serving somebody in the shop, it's very difficult to.
Well,
you just work.
Yeah, it's weird, because now, I went to see the Who. Not last year, it kind of been last year before, at Wembley with the orchestra, and that was amazing. And I've come to really love the Who. But when I was a teenager, Roger Daltrey used to come in the shop where I worked because he had a trout farm, and he used to come in to buy stuff for the trout farm. But I was such like a snotty kind of teenager. I was like, it's just old music. I'm not interested in this bloke, whatever. And now I'd be like, Roger Daltrey used to come in the shop I worked in. That would be. I'd be far more starstruck now. I was like, he's the guy from Buddy. That was about all I knew.
King of I wonder if he's still got the trout farm.
I don't know.
That's the future. Right, we'll wrap it up. Pete, thank you so much.
No problem at all.
Can you tell people where to investigate your content in the media and what you do?
My website is peterrogers.co.uk, and I'm on Twitter. I was on it very early, so it's actually my name. So it's at Pete Rogers on Twitter, and then most stuff is covered there.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, mate. I'll put all the links in the video notes as well. Right. I'm going to switch off. Thanks, dude. I'm going to switch off the recording.